Look how professional this looks, huh? It's a wonder what a different lens can do. Check it out, new lights back here. What do you guys think? Kind of looks like somebody's backyard now, pretty cool. Me when I have an idea. So what's poppin', party people? I hope you're all doing well today. In this video, we're gonna learn how to make a cigarettes after type beat inside of FL Studio, but you can use whatever DAW you have as well. Doesn't really matter. So the nice thing about their music is that it's very stripped down and very formulaic, but it's very, very stylistic, and there's specific things that they really do like on every song. This is something that Greg Gonzalez, the lead singer and guitar player, did intentionally with the band. He wanted their songs to have a very cohesive style, and just every song you hear is like, okay, that is their specific sound. So there's a few crucial elements when it comes to making their style of beats. On every one of their songs, they're going to at least have some very ambient reverb guitars, very simple stripped down drums, usually with nothing other than kick, snare, and ride cymbal, some sort of ambient pad sound, and finally some bass. And then sometimes they also overdub other instruments like acoustic guitar or something like that. So you're probably definitely going to need an electric guitar for this one. All the other stuff can be done with plugins or one-shot samples and stuff like that, but guitar is pretty hard to recreate with plugins. So the first thing we want to do here before we even start recording is come up with a chord progression. I'm just going to use this bad boy to come up with a chord progression, but you can use whatever you want. I'm going to take a capo and just put it on a random fret. And we want to go for a really simple chord progression that kind of has like a melancholy but also hopeful feel to it. So I think something like this would sound good. This is basically a C shape, E minor shape, A minor shape, and G shape. Going from this C to the E minor kind of gives it that dark and powerful, mysterious feel, and then going to another minor just continues that, but then we kind of resolve it with the G. And then we're like, oh, okay, we're good, we're chilling now. And then a lot of times for the chorus, they'll actually change up the chords. So we're probably gonna do the same thing here as well. You can change some of the chords you already have into 7th chords or something like that. So instead of having this C major, we can do C major 7. You can flip around the order of the chords, you can add new chords, whatever you want to do. Just make sure it's something distinctly different from the other section. Now that we have that chord progression locked into our brains or written down somewhere, we're going to open up FL Studio, or whatever DAW you use to. And we're just going to record that little guitar progression that we came up with. That way we can use it as a base to build everything else off of, and we can also use it as an acoustic guitar layer later on. And now for the chorus. So now we have the guitar recorded. I played that at about 120 BPM. Kind of the range of their songs is anywhere from like up there to 120, sometimes 130, to all the way down like really slow to like 70 BPM even. It just depends on what you're going for. If you want a really slow, very melancholy kind of feel, you can go with the slower BPM, but if you want a little bit more upbeat, you can go with like 120 or something like this. So now that we have this chord progression, we can use this as a basis to kind of build everything else around. Speaking of which, now we're going to get into one of the main components of the cigarette sound: electric guitar. But this is not just going to be any old electric guitar here. The effects that we put on it are going to be very, very specific. So the electric guitar is definitely going to be more of a lead guitar type sound. You're usually never going to be doing any strumming with this thing. So what I like to do is just play the acoustic guitar that we already have, and then just fiddle around and come up with some melodies to go over top of those chords. One thing that can help out, instead of just aimlessly playing around on the guitar, is just taking the chords of the main chord progression and just arpeggiating them. Just simple stuff like that can make a really good lead sound. I've noticed that a lot of times what he does is, instead of arpeggiating from the top, he'll arpeggiate from the bottom up. So he'll start on the high E string like this. And then obviously once the chorus comes around, you want to change up that lead pattern again, because it won't sound exactly right over the chord change. And obviously that right there is going to have a lot of effects on it, but we're going to add those effects later on at the end when we mix everything together. And I know I said you probably need an electric guitar for this, but honestly, because this pattern is so simple, you could probably just use a plugin or whatever and get away with it. But now I'm actually going to move on to drums. Drums. So part of the reason that I waited quite a while to make this video was because a huge part of their drum sound overall is the ride cymbal. They almost never use a hi-hat at all. I didn't have an actual ride cymbal until recently, but I just recently got this one. Also, if you don't have a ride cymbal or drums, that's totally fine. I'm going to show you guys how to program drums just like this in a minute. But a lot of times for the drum pattern, they just do a simple little like boom, 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 boom kind of thing. But just go with whatever feels best for you. If you want to change the placement of the kicks and stuff like that, that's totally fine. As far as the mic setup goes, we're going to have a snare top and bottom microphone, kick mic, and then I'm also going to have this microphone on the ride cymbal. I actually noticed in a lot of their live performances, they mic the underside of the ride, like that right there. But I'm just gonna do the top of it because, I don't know. If I'm not mistaken, recording on the bottom makes it sound a little darker, and this is a pretty dark cymbal already. And finally, I'm gonna have this little fella pointed at the drum kit from all the way over here, kind of just like a room mic thing. Also, I forgot to mention, but if you are playing drums, make sure you play pretty lightly because they have a very soft drum sound. For the mixing on these drums, you want it to sound very ambient, kind of like this was recorded in a big room. The room mic that we did, I'm just going to put a bunch of reverb on that and just kind of tuck it away more in the mix. I'm going to use probably my favorite reverb plugin, which is called TrueVerb. There'll be a link in the description below, but you can pick a bunch of different presets like large concert or like drum room. I think I'm going to go with drum room, and I'm just going to increase the size and the distance a little bit, and we get this very cool ambient kind of reverb sound. Honestly, we could just use that recording right there because a lot of the cigarette songs have a very indie, a little bit lo-fi kind of feel to them, so this would be perfectly fine just like this. As far as the plugins for the overall drum mix, I'm going to put a little compression on there, some EQ, all that kind of fancy stuff, and of course I'm going to put TrueVerb on that drum bus as well to make it sound like it was all recorded in like a big room or something. All of the plugins that I use for mixing will be linked down in the description below if you want to go check those out. But for those of you who don't have a drum set, never fear, my friend, because I also did not have a drum set for a very long time, but that never stopped me before. So I'm going to show you how to get some really good programmed drums as well. Obviously, if you are programming drums, your sound selection is going to be the most important thing. I actually have some pretty good live acoustic drum samples in my vintage drum kit and my indie drum pack. I'll leave a link to both of those in the description if you want to go check those out. Once we have our samples, we're just going to recreate the same pattern, which is just like a boom, boom kind of thing. And then just a little two-step on the ride cymbal. This is alright, but obviously it sounds very robotic, so we're going to change that. What we want to do is bring up the swing a little bit first, and then we're also going to go in and just manually adjust all of the notes, so just slightly bring it forward, change the velocity so they're not the same. You can press Alt-R to do that. Just do this with your kick, snare, and your ride cymbal. Inside FL Studio, if you want to move something really precisely, what you do is you hold down Alt on your keyboard and then click on it, and you'll be able to move it like anywhere you want. But now let's really go in and tackle this ride cymbal because we need to make this sound very realistic. First thing we want to do is alternate the velocity of every other one, and that's kind of just the basic way of doing it, but actually more of the way that I was accenting the notes was like this, to where this one was up higher and then this one was down lower. But hold your horses because we're not quite done yet. It does sound good, but we can make it better. What we want to do is go down here to Control and then Note Find Pitch. And now we're going to ever so slightly adjust the pitch of each one of these hits. You should not be adjusting it by any more than like 20 or 30 cents. 30 is kind of pushing it. When you click on it, you can see in the top left corner how many cents you're adjusting it by. And this sounds a lot more realistic. Oh, but you thought we were done? No. We're actually going to go to the envelope here, turn this on, and then we're going to right click on the attack, press A to create an automation clip. Now we're going to go in and every other hit, we're going to bring the attack up just slightly. So the automation clip is going to look something like this. And that basically just makes it so that the sound of the stick hitting the ride is not the same every single time. Now we have a pretty realistic programmed ride sound. Check that out. You would never know that I just did that on the computer. But for me, there's no reason for me to do that because my ride cymbal's right back there and I just recorded it. But that's how you do that if you need to know. So now we have acoustic, we have electric, we have drums. Now we need bass. So I'm going to do something here that is absolutely unfathomable, unforgivable, just despicable. I'm going to actually take out the muting. That is because on a lot of the cigarette songs, they have a very plucky, boomy kind of bass sound that almost borders on sounding kind of like an upright bass. The bass lines are usually very easy though, just following the root note of the chords. And also a lot of times they'll match up the hits on the bass guitar with the kick in the drums. So because those drums are like boom, boom, we're going to follow that with the bass. Also make sure you really pluck those strings. Don't be shy now. And also let the notes sustain for a long time because you don't want to have short notes like this. They don't really do that a whole lot. It doesn't really fit their sound. Feel free to throw in a few transition notes here and there, but for the most part, just keep it pretty simple. So there's really two more essential components that we need to get up in this bad boy before we can say that we've fully recorded everything that we need. One of those being a very, very minor detail that makes a huge, huge difference. Tambourine. So this is kind of a huge thing, right? This is on like pretty much every single one of their songs. It's basically just a tambourine hit like this, layered over the top of the snare, but just reverbed super hard. And it's up to you, whatever feels right for your track. Sometimes they do every single snare hit. Sometimes they do every other snare hit. You can do every fourth snare, whatever you want to do. So the final component that we need here, the final piece of the puzzle, is going to be a pad sound. In the band, they have a guy who actually just plays the synthesizer, so they have a patch on an actual synthesizer, but we're going to try to create something that sounds similar inside of Serum. So mind you, I am not a sound designer. I can make a few sounds here and there, but there's probably people who can do this way better than I can. But we're kind of just going to go through some of the analog waveforms and see what has a good starting sound. We're going to flip on the MG low filter. A triangle wave thing like this kind of sounds too robotic. Their pad has more of a natural sound to it. We probably could honestly just load up a sine wave and call it a day, but I want to get something that sounds a little bit better than that. So maybe I'll layer a sine with like another sound. I think this right here sounds pretty decent. Not bad, not the best though. And now we're just going to recreate the same chords as our chord progression. So I'm also going to take these chords and make some inversions out of them. So for example, this one is going to get both of these notes moved down like that. And we're also going to copy the bass notes of all these chords and just duplicate them down an octave. Okay, it's not an octave. An octave. All right, so that pretty much does it for the stuff that we need to record. But now we're going to do the other very important step of the process, which is mixing. First things first, we're going to mix the guitar. Phaser. Put a little bit of phaser on there. That's just going to give the guitar a little bit more ambience and a sense of movement, kind of. And then we're also going to pull up CLA Guitars. This is my absolute favorite guitar plugin. I use this on basically all of my guitars. The reamp is on clean, and the reverb is set to arena because we want that big, wide sound. Now a little bit of delay. This delay is going to be a little bit shorter, not exactly a slapback delay, but just like a little shorter. And then we're going to add another delay on there, crazy enough. And you can see this delay is a little bit longer. And those delays kind of stack on top of each other and make a longer tail. But now the part that brings this whole thing together, true verb, of course. I picked the preset Estate Bathroom and then I just messed with the settings a little bit. And this just sounds so good. And the last thing is just a little EQ to take out some of the low end here. Now for the bass mixing. So I kind of mix my bass guitar like the same every time. I just use this Black 76 compressor and then I do a little EQ that looks like this. But for this one, I added a couple other things. I just added some pretty light compression, and then I added some saturation, just so that it sticks out a little bit more in the mix, because I wanted it to punch a little bit harder. And then I actually also added True Verb onto this. I also picked the Estate Bathroom preset for this, but I just toned it way down. Essentially, my thought process is that a lot of times, I think how they record their music is in like a specific location. He said that they've recorded in like courtyards and stairwells and like other weird places. So if you're recording in a place like that, everything you record is going to have natural reverb. So I just kind of put a little bit of it at least on everything, except the acoustic guitars. Because they overdub acoustic guitars, it always sounds a lot more clean and like a studio recording, which for whatever reason just gives it a very nice sound. So that's what I wanted to go for here as well. Tambourine, pretty self-explanatory. Pull up a little True Verb. I'm gonna use the Cathedral preset for this because we gotta go a lot of reverb. We need a cathedral level reverb for this. And then honestly, just slap a little reverb onto that pad sound we made and we're pretty much good to go. As far as the layout, you don't have to do anything too complicated. You can just do a little verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus kind of thing going on. I just started out with a little 4 count and then everything drops in. 1, 2, 3, 4. But definitely make sure you include some part in there where it's just like drums and bass. They tend to do that a lot. They do it a lot when he's singing like something very soft and intimate. But yeah, other than that, you can kind of just repeat the parts that you have. That's the nice thing about recording a separate thing for the verse and the chorus, is that you can kind of change them out and use them in different places if you want to. But honestly, I think that is pretty much going to do it for me in this video here today. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, learning how to make a little cigarettes after sex. type beat in FL Studio. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns down in the comments below. All my social media, drum kits, and plugins and stuff I use will be down in the description below if you'd like to go check that stuff out. And I will see you guys next time.